Hey, everybody. Little technical difficulties there. Um, but I'm here now, and we have people from Maryland and Monterey Bay, California. That's a pretty place. Reading, Massachusetts. That's a fun place too. Um, Gilbert, Arizona, and Facebook is here. Man, that was quick. Hey, Waldoboro. Hey, Anchorage, Alaska. All right, let me jump into some of the stuff you asked about here and some of the stuff you didn't ask about because we're in this really funny place. And I don't mean funny, haha, of course. We're in a funny place in the country right now where it certainly feels, and I'm going to unpack that, but it feels as if things are falling apart. Like everything seems to be falling apart right now, from the military planes that are falling into the ocean to SNAP benefits that aren't going to go out, to healthcare premiums going up, to rural hospitals closing, to people losing their jobs. I mean, there's an awful lot of stuff going on, and let's see if we can unpack that a little bit, because there's some responses to that I think are important. So let's start here with the fact that the administration has said that as of November 1st, the SNAP benefits, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits that are supposed to be going out to about 42 million Americans will not go out. And they are saying that they cannot put those out because of the shutdown. It's important to remember that SNAP benefits are paid through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And the reason for that goes back to the New Deal and the fact that the original nutrition programs were designed to create artificial shortages to drive prices up for agricultural products during the Depression. So for that reason, it was a little complicated, all the new, what they called the alphabet soup of agencies that they were creating during the Depression. The one that ended up being in charge of getting rid of those surpluses to drive up prices was in the Agriculture Department, and therefore our nutrition programs still reside in the Department of Agriculture, which has always struck me as being very odd, to be honest, but there they sit. Anyway, the USDA said in September, when it was coming up for plans for a potential government shutdown, that it would be able to use a reserve fund that Congress has established that has about $6 billion in it to fund SNAP programs even when the government shut down. In addition to that reserve amount of money, there is another reserve in the USDA that is not specifically earmarked for SNAP that has about $23 billion in it. And it was that one that the USDA tapped to put some money into women's, infants, and children, that program known as WIC, that provides nutrition assistance for women, infants, and children. It's a great program, by the way. So there are those two funds out there, but one is specifically already earmarked for SNAP, for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. All right, so when they put together their plans in September, the USDA said that it would be able to use those resources to keep SNAP benefits coming, because Congress has made it very clear that it thinks we need to keep those SNAP benefits coming for obvious reasons, right? And it's provided extra money for that to happen. Now, on October 10th, I believe it was, the administration abruptly said, no, we can't use those funds. That will be illegal. We cannot use those funds. And it seems pretty clear that they were doing that to try and put pressure on the Democrats in the Senate to go along with it's so complicated, to go along with the continuing resolution that the House Republicans passed to fund the government only through November 21st. And mind you, House Speaker Mike Johnson has kept the House out of Washington because he doesn't want to negotiate over the continuing resolution. The government's still not going to be funded. They still haven't passed those appropriations bills that need to be passed to fund the government after November 21st, and they should be in Congress working on that while the government is shut down. The Senate's still in session, but Johnson does not want to bring the House back into session because he's trying to jam the Senate Democrats, and because he doesn't want to swear in Adelita Grijalva of Arizona, who was elected on September 23rd, because she is going to sign the discharge petition that means that the House will be forced to take a vote on whether or not to provide information about the Epstein investigation more publicly than it has. And we know that Trump's in those files. All right. So to go back to SNAP, the Republicans are trying really hard to jam the Democrats into going along with this continuing resolution. And the reason that this matters and the reason that the Democrats have said no, there's a number of reasons, but the most immediate reason is that when the Republicans passed that bill in July, the continuing resolution, I'm sorry, the budget reconciliation bill that they passed without Democratic votes, that they basically threw everything in it they wanted. They cut Medicaid, they cut SNAP, they cut all kinds of stuff, but they did it in such a way that they thought the pigeons wouldn't come home to roost until after the 2026 elections. But they appeared to have overlooked those people who might have cared about it. No, not because the Democrats brought it up. They went ahead and refused to extend the premium tax credits, which supported people buying health insurance on the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare markets. And those premiums, the bills are going out now. They're going out at the end of October, beginning of November, and people's healthcare premiums are skyrocketing. The average increase, I believe, is 114%, which means that it's more than doubling. And those aren't cheap premiums. I mean, healthcare is too expensive in this country. Editorializing, sorry about that. That's happening. And the Democrats are saying you can't do this. Not only are you going to have 4 million people drop off of health insurance, but everybody else's health care premiums are going through the roof. This is not okay. The Republicans want the Democrats to cave because they don't want it to be their fault that this happened. They want to be able to say, hey, you signed on to this too. And the Democrats are like, you can't take people's health care away. So now the Republicans are saying, okay, well, if you're going to make a stand on this, we're going to make sure nobody gets fed. And that's what's at stake right now. So interestingly enough, and I'll try and pick this up again later, you know who is getting paid in this shutdown? ICE agents. ICE agents are getting paid. They're even getting overtime pay. A real sign, I think, of where the Republican priorities are. But so what happened today was that 25 Democratic-led states that had, I'm sorry, it's a total of 25. So it's either Democratic-led states, so there are Democratic attorneys general, or the governors of states where the Republican-led legislatures would not sign on. So that would include Kentucky and Kansas. And also the District of Columbia sued the USDA, the head of the USDA, Brooke Rollins, the Russell Vogt, who's the head of the Office of Management and Budget, and the Office of Management and Budget. He's the one making these decisions about where money is going, and the U.S. to say Congress very clearly said it intended to have this money go out to people during a shutdown, and the money is there. You can't just decide not to do what Congress wanted you to do. So they have sued over that. Even still, obviously, there is going to be a hiatus here, and that's on SNAP payments. And that's a really big issue because not only does that mean people who were counting on that money are not going to see it for food, but a number of stores around the country depend on SNAP payments to keep their own margins alive, especially smaller stores especially rural parts of the country. So ironically, maybe not, maybe that's the wrong word, the people who are going to be hurt worst by this, everybody in this country is going to be hurt, but the people who are going to be hurt worst are going to be from Republican rural districts, because not only are people not going to be getting SNAP benefits, but also the stores that depend on those SNAP benefits to keep current are going to be falling apart. At the same time that people's health insurance is also going up and rural hospitals are facing closures because of the cuts that were in that budget reconciliation bill to Medicare, for Medicaid, for example, and there will be cuts to Medicare as well. All right, so that's what's going on with the SNAP payments that you asked about. But there's also something weird. These adjectives are wrong, right? Funny, weird. We're in a really, an unprecedented period because we're having this government shutdown at a time when the Republican dominated Congress has been unable to pass a single appropriations bill, which is, we're so overdue for that. But a government shutdown is a really big deal. It's important. It's a really big deal. It's a bad thing. And normally, Congress is in session and it is madly trying to negotiate an end. And in this case, the Republicans have simply said, no, we're not going to negotiate. You got to do what we say, even though it's going to hurt the country really badly. And so it's this weird pressure to get the Democrats to sign on to hurting the American people really badly. And that's just, it's this weird sense of, the Republicans could talk the way they did for so long because there were these guardrails that everybody thought that would never really get taken down. And between Elon Musk and Russell Vogt and the Republicans jamming through that budget reconciliation bill back in July, the guardrails are gone. And and now they're sort of saying to the Democrats, well, you have to sign on this too. And the Democrats are like, we're not signing on to that. At the same time that the pain is starting to hit the American people. And at the same time, of course, that the Republicans have given $20 million in a dollar peso swap and another guarantee of $20 billion to a Trump ally in Argentina. And at the same time that Trump has torn down the East Wing of the White House. And by the way, there is circulating on social media a right-wing post saying, this is a crazy liberal freak out. He only took down this little portico of the East Wing. This is it on Monday. Well, that was it on Monday, but by Friday, the entire East Wing, including the colonnade, was gone. And when you see that stuff, if you're at all involved in that stuff, push back because the East Wing and the colonnade is gone. It is razed, R-A-Z-E-D, to the ground. So you have that and this idea of this ballroom at the same time that Americans are facing. And again, I want to be really clear, even if you're not getting SNAP benefits, you're probably shopping at stores that need those SNAP benefits to stay afloat. And certainly I am. And that's going to hurt all of us. So there's this weird, they kind of are, I feel like you're sort of watching this ideology of the last 40 years kind of hitting this wall. And they're trying to get the Democrats to sign on. And so far, the Democrats are saying, no, we're going to sue you because this is not what Congress wanted when it provided SNAP benefits. But here's the other thing. While the House is not meeting, the president has left the country. Presidents do not leave the country during a shutdown, and Trump left. He was not going to negotiate. He doesn't appear to care about the American people at all. He just left. Which, in the past, presidents have canceled overseas trips rather than being away during a shutdown. But he clearly is making the point he's not going to negotiate. He wants the Democrats to do what he said. But here's the weird thing about it, and I got to stop using these adjectives. Trump's not okay. I've been saying that for a while, but if you are watching how he is behaving overseas, People magazine today said, he boasted on Air Force One about taking what appears to have been a dementia exam. And we know he had his first, at least by 2018. That's the first time that I believe it was NBC reported that he talked about having one. He was boasting about what a great job. He got a perfect score on what he called an IQ test, but I promise you, identifying a tiger and an elephant and a giraffe is not on an IQ test. So there was that weird boastfulness. And then he was weirdly dancing. I think it was in Malaysia. And then he got to Japan for a meeting with the my notes just went blank, so we're going to see where we end up here. That was my technical difficulty before. Hang on. With the Japanese prime minister, and he just wandered off. He just started wandering. So oh, now my notes are back. This is good. So he's it is getting harder and harder and harder to look away from the fact that the president is not okay. And people are asking what they can do in this moment, and that's one thing really to push, especially a Republican representatives and senators and governors on. Do you think that JD Vance is capable of taking over this government? And do you think the president is okay? Because the fact that this dude has the nuclear codes, I mean, he probably doesn't remember he has the nuclear codes, but certainly his behavior is very erratic. And the fact that he felt able to tear down the East Wing of the White House with no permits, no permissions, no consultation with Congress, nothing, suggests that he does not have any inhibitions. And that is profoundly, profoundly dangerous. But so here's one of the other things that is going on while this is happening. While he is overseas, there have been big changes going on domestically in the United States, which does raise the question of who is making these decisions. So on the 27th, I think, I've lost track of what day it is, the White House, and that's, I hope I made it sound like that was in quotation marks. The White House announced that it was switching out ICE field agents in critical locations and replacing them with officers from CBP, Customs and Border Patrol. And that matters because for all that we have focused on ICE agents, that is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE agents do have a long history, have a history in the places where the field commanders have been, and they are traditionally charged with going after actual criminals. And they have been focusing since Trump got in office of deporting undocumented migrants, undocumented immigrants. And, they have certainly overreached, and they've certainly, at least it looks like that to me. I'm not a judge and a jury over here, but people are rightly unhappy about the activities of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. But the real wacko behavior is Customs and Border Patrol. The Black Hawk helicopter in Chicago, for example, and so on, has been Customs and Border Patrol. And that's, if you remember, I've been really pretty careful to distinguish about which federal agents are doing what, and also to point out that these are not military personnel, and who have been much more reluctant to have anything to do with anything that the administration is trying to get them to do. But so it appears from reporting, I'm going to say reporting in general. I read it at MSNBC, but I've seen it elsewhere as well. And I like to trace back who got the original story, just because it feels like that's a lot of work for those reporters to do. And I try and call that out. And I don't yet know where that original story came from, and I need to find that. But it appears from the reporting that is out there that the person who has made the lists is Corey Lewandowski. Corey Lewandowski is a special government employee working under the Department of Homeland Security and the Secretary, Kristi Noem. He, again, an unelected official that is working with Kristi Noem. You might want to look that one up, those of you who are interested in that relationship there. And it appears that he did those lists acting with Bovino. What's his first name? Greg Bovino. Hold on. I do have this written down. Yes, it is Greg Bovino, who is one of the sector chiefs of Customs and Border Patrol, but who is one of the guys who's really pushing the tear gas and the real violence. He was in court today in Chicago for apparently breaking a judge's express order, and he has been ordered to report to her every day to prove that he is not deliberately breaking the law. So there's this big switch there while Trump was out of town, there was also a really big switch in the Defense Department. Now, remember, the Defense Department has gotten rid of all the original official Defense Department reporters who were very, very good because they wanted the Defense Department officials under Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth wanted reporters to sign an agreement saying they would report on nothing that was not expressly authorized by officials in the Defense Department. And to be clear, that's not just you can't reproduce classified information. That's they wanted to have to be able to rubber stamp anything that came out of the Defense Department. Well, this is part of Hegseth's real attempt to stop leaks coming out of the department because he's having a hard time over there. But they got rid of those. They said you couldn't report from there unless you signed this agreement, and all the traditional reporters walked out, and they were replaced with right-wing podcasters and really kind of fringe people. If you remember, one of the teams that walked out was the Fox News channel. So we're talking to people who are left are people like Tim Pool, who is a right-wing podcaster who before the 2024 election was actually being funded by Russia, right? So the Defense Department has asked members of the Defense Department to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Mind you, all these officials can't release any kind of national secrets, but they want them to sign a non-disclosure agreement for anything related to the strikes in Latin America. What's with that? Now, we've also had today another 3 strikes taking out 4 boats in the Eastern Pacific. And again, if you remember, the White House, I'm sorry, the Defense Department and the White House have both insisted that those people that it is killing are those who are trafficking narcotics to the United States. And yet, those boats are small boats, and they are, 1,000 miles from the U.S. or more. They would have to stop significantly for refueling. There are a lot of real holes to this story, and the White House has not provided any evidence to back up their allegations to lawmakers or to the public. And finally, even Republican lawmakers are like, you can't do this. What are you doing? What are you doing out there? And and saying, you have to give us some kind of information about what you are doing. And yet, now we've got this call for a non-disclosure agreement and increasing rumblings from people like Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, saying that, in fact, this is all a prelude to a larger military enterprise in Latin America, which is, again, Congress has been completely cut out of this. And this has taken on taken off while Trump is overseas. So that is also going on. And then there is the fact that there's some more stuff over here. I'm going to give you a little bit more on this, and then I will go back to one of the final large questions here. So one of the things that you are seeing in the midst of all this, and there's a bigger pattern here, I think, is also the attempt on the part of elected Republicans to mess with this upcoming vote next week. Yeah, next week from today, to mess with this upcoming vote by putting officers in the streets and by having poll watchers in, I think it's New Jersey and California, both states where there are elections with national implications on the ballot. And you're seeing an increasing focus on, I think, trying both to undercut the idea that Trump has dementia by suggesting that Biden did, but also trying to hit home the idea that if Democrats are elected, the election was not legitimate. And you can see Trump setting up this argument through his posts on social media, talking about how the election in 2020 was rigged, despite the fact his own people and all the courts that were asked to look into it said it was not. This idea that somehow there's going to be something illegal going on in 2026 and 2028. And what they're really trying to set up here is the idea that nobody but a Republican can legitimately win an election. And that's, completely contrary both to reality, but also to the principles of American democracy. And that, again, you're seeing this in a lot of different places. And you're also seeing it, interestingly enough, in Trump's increasing emphasis on the idea he's going to run in 2028. That's interesting because that's in part, him not wanting to take second fiddle to anybody, but also because I think he really doesn't want people to be talking about the fact that he's not performing his job very well, and probably other people are starting to eye that job, and he doesn't want that to happen. So at the same time, you've got the all these things happening that are really bad for the American people. You've got Congress and the president basically checking out, and then you've also got them saying, "But you have to reelect us because we are the only legitimate people to run this country." And all of those things together, to me, don't work. That's an equation that doesn't work. And I think you can see that in the truly abysmal poll rating that Trump has now, lowest for anybody ever, not just him, in his first term. He's gone below that as well. And you also have, what else is this here? You also, again, have increasing discomfort on the part of Republican electeds, because as people lose food, as they lose health insurance, as they lose jobs, as the farmers are hit bad, and so on, who are you going to call? You're going to call your representatives, and the people who are getting the hurt worst right now are those people in Republican districts. So I think you're going to see a lot of that going forward. And somebody asked me to talk about how did we get from the Gilded Age to the Progressive Era, an era that the Gilded Age looked very much like today looks to us, and how did the Progressive Era come out of that as in the way it does. And I wanted to answer that because the way we got there is feels very similar to where we are now. When people during the Gilded Age got to a point where they really recognized that the system was rigged against ordinary Americans, for decades, the Republicans had been telling them that the problem with the economy was not the robber barons. The problem was, the African Americans in the South, or the immigrants in the cities, or lazy farmers, or there was always some reason that the economy wasn't very good. And that there came a time when finally people looked around and said, wait a minute, you're building mansions in Newport, Massachusetts, and having parties that are costing, millions of dollars in today's dollars. Well, we're working jobs where we can't begin to make ends meet. We need to redo this system. Key to that was having a press that recognized what was going on and was starting to report on it. And that really hits home to me today when I was thinking about doing this politics chat today. I hope you got that figuring out what was going on with SNAP and how Democratic states are trying to push back on that, that's really complicated. And, untangling it, I'm pretty deep into this stuff now. So for me to untangle it wasn't a big deal. But I promise you, that would have been really hard, at least for me to untangle 10 years ago, when there would be a story about SNAP in a newspaper and I'd have to try and put it all together myself. The fact we have people like me, but also all the other producers now saying, hey, you want to understand what's going on with this legal case? I'll walk you through it, I think is key to understanding how the government works. And I think it's been key to waking people up. So I would say we're going on a good track here for helping people understand not just that Trump is wackadoodle, but that the system has not worked for 40 freaking years because the very wealthy took it over and took it out of the hands of the rest of us. And that's not to say that I'm making some great communist argument. I'm saying that in order for democracy to work, one person needs one vote, and we need to have accurate information about what's going on so that we can use our votes wisely. And I feel like we're getting toward that. So let me go to a final couple things about about where we are and what we can do. So, lots of people frustrated, lots of people frightened, lots of people worried about where the country is going. And I say amen to all of that. But do not forget, and there are some of us screaming about this, and everybody should be. A week from today, we have a major election on the ballots. 52,000 races out there. In Maine, for example, people are tying themselves in knots over who's going to run for Senate in a year. Like in a year, who knows what's going to be happening now? The primaries aren't even until next June. But you know what's happening in a week? We have a vote on whether or not a measure that is backed by the wealthiest Republicans around the country is going to pass. And that measure will take away the opportunity for about 40% of Mainers who vote by absentee ballot to vote. That's a really important vote. If you are in Maine, turn and you vote in Maine, turn out and vote to make sure people keep access to absentee voting. And that's one, people are all, like I say, they're all upset about this Senate race that isn't happening until way over the horizon. This is happening in a week. Turn out for it. Get people to turn out for it. There's gubernatorial races in Virginia and New Jersey. There's Proposition 50 in California to try and change gerrymandering until the 2030 census, to try and counteract what the Republicans have done in Texas by their midterm gerrymandering there, which is going to be permanent until a new legislature tries to redo that after 2030. Get involved in the states, Pennsylvania, where there are state Supreme Court races that are important. All of these races are critically important, and showing up for them and turning people out for them, because these will be turnout elections, is crucially important. So there's that you can do, but there is also pressure to be kept up at the national level. I was not an Epstein conspiracy person, like, at all. I didn't even really pay a ton of attention to it, except as, oh, this is a traumatic experience, and I hope for the survivors who have been heroic, and I hope that the law comes after the guilty people. But I have come around because of what I would call the space around the elephant. Anything that the Republicans are so afraid of that the House Speaker will not let the House hold meetings has got to be something we want to see. I want to see anyway. Keep that pressure up on the Epstein files. And I think we really need to call out to our, especially Republican representatives, Trump's mental state. Because I got to tell you, this is not normal. I mean, we've certainly had presidents before who were not okay. You think of Richard Nixon, who was drinking heavily in his last days in the White House, to the point that Henry Kissinger said to people, don't take orders from him without coming to me because he's drinking too much. You think about, well, even for that matter, never mind, I'm not going to go down presidents' drinking habits, but you think about the fact that Woodrow Wilson had a stroke while in office, but he too was kept under pretty close wraps by advisors, including his wife, who were very careful to make sure that the orders that came out of a mentally impaired president did not impact the government. And, throughout our history, we have had presidents who weren't okay. In this case, Trump appears to be surrounded by people who are using him for their own ends and are not therefore inclined to call attention to his mental incapacity or to stop it. Because, as I say, now that he's overseas, all of a sudden stuff's happening here. I think we need to call that out for our own safety. That's another big thing to do. Now, we also have the issue coming up of the fact we have these, at least on the books right now, these SNAP cuts. And you know what? Even if they end up restoring that money, we're going into the holiday season. People are going to be losing their jobs. We need to make sure that we are looking out for our neighbors and making sure that food banks are supplied. And this is not my area of specialty. Please check with those people who are already in the business and ask them what they need. And I'm not even going to speculate because it's not my bailiwick, but I will tell you, there are people who've devoted their lives to making sure people who need food get it. They're the ones to ask what to do to make sure they do get it. That's one way we can remind people that we live in a country that helps each other out and that our politics should reflect that. What else can we do? I think the other things that I always talk about, make sure you are registered to vote. Help other people register to vote. Make sure that you push back against disinformation and spread good information. And make sure, again, that we try and keep the creativity and joy that we had in the No King's Day, and that we carry that forward as we envision what a new government, a new American government can look like, because we clearly have to fix an awful lot of things that we thought were going along okay and weren't. So again, keep thinking about what that looks like. And one of the things that is interesting, and I'm not going to go into it right now because I've already run over, but for all that things feel like there are few windows opening in as the doors are closing, there are new and really provocative and, to my mind, potentially successful ways in which people are rethinking the way we do things in this country. And some of them are gonna take. And that I think is actually really hopeful. And I'm not gonna go into that more now because I don't wanna get people, too excited about things that aren't I'm not a lawyer, that are not necessarily going to work out. But look around you. People are coming up with interesting new ways to do things that I think might pay off down the line. So do keep the faith and get people out to vote. We got a week left for this election, and get your friends, get people out to vote, get in touch with the organizations turning people out for these elections, and we'll see where we are after next week. I will see you again on Thursday, and I'm doing a bunch of really cool interviews this week. Just a reminder, by the way, I do write up a lot of what's going on in the country along with history at both on Substack and on Facebook. It's always free. And the YouTube channel, same thing. Although what I do on the in the letters is keep a record of what is happening. And I don't talk about things you can do to change stuff. And that frustrates some people, but it's not the same project as these what's going on videos or some of the activist videos I do. So if you're interested, those things are there. And I think that's it for tonight. Thank you for being here, and I will see you again on Thursday. And as I say, I'm back again tomorrow, but I don't remember with whom. So I will at least see you on Thursday. Thank you for being here.